In this video, I will give you a demo of using environments for running a test case against multiple environments. So I have one test case defined at the moment for the Testfully API. So as you can see, I can run this test case and send the request to the production API. What I want to do is to change this test case so it can run against two environments, both test and production. The first thing that I want to do is to create the test and production environment. So I will come to the environment section and define an environment called production. So I can set a value for any of the configs that I have, or I can leave them blank. For now, I will leave them blank. And then I can create another environment for UAT. So the next time that I run the test case, I can select from the environment as well. I can select, for example, run it against UAT environment. You can still see that the request is being sent to the production environment despite the fact that I have asked Testfully to run it against the UAT environment. The question is that what's the URL for UAT environment? I can come to my test case and I can see that it is still sending the request to this URL, which is hard-coded. We can fix this one now. Let's go to the config section and create a new config called Testfully URL. I will set it to string. And what's the default value for it? Is this URL. And I can now go ahead and set two values per environment. For production, I want it to be this URL. For UAT, I want it to be API-UAT. So we have defined a new config value called Testfully URL, and that config value has two different values for production and UAT environment. Let's go back to our test. We know that how to use config values in our test cases. So we want to get rid of this section, type add, and select Testfully URL. If I run my test case now against production environment, we can clearly see that the request is being sent to the production environment. And if I run it again against UAT environment this time, we can see that the URL is changed to that one. One more feature that the environment offers that if I come to the validation section, you can see that I have three sets of validations. I have one validation for all environments. I have a validation for production as well as validation for UAT. This feature allows you to set validations per environment. I want to give you an example. For production environment, I want the response to be returned in 100 milliseconds. But for UAT environment, I don't mind if it be returned in 1000 milliseconds. So if I save this test, you can see that for production environment, we set this specific value, and we have set another value for UAT environment as well. So if I come and run this one against UAT environment, you can see that one of the validations says that the response time was less than 1000 milliseconds. And the reason is that we have set 1000 milliseconds here. I want to run the same test case against production environment. You can see that the test failed. The reason is that it responded in 819 milliseconds, but we were expecting it to be 100 milliseconds and not 1000 milliseconds. The reason for that one is that for production environment, you can see that we have set this one to 100. So that's how you can validate. If I come and run this test case without selecting any environment, so if I pick default config values, you can see that there won't be any validation for the response time. The reason is that in all environments, we haven't set any response time. So as you can see, you have the option to set validations per environment, or you can set validations for all of the environments. Because we set 200 OK here, but we haven't set it here or in the UAT environment, if I run this test case against my UAT environment, I can clearly see that the response code is still validated, and the reason is that we have defined the response code validations in the all environment section.